What if Gen 1 had 15 starters? What would they be? What are the qualities a starter Pokemon ought to have? These are perhaps some of the most important questions of our age, and I'm going to do my part for mankind and provide answers that are totally objective and 100% unquestionably accurate. Naturally, my process that will accomplish these goals is altering what already exists in order to make my claims correct, and when I can't do that, resorting to just making things up out of thin air. Politicians have done it since the dawn of time, why can't I? So what makes a starter a starter? Well, at least in the first generation of games, the starters all have 3 stages, with the first form evolving in the mid-teens and the second form evolving in the early to mid-30s. The first forms have a base stat total of around 250, while all second forms have 325 and all final forms have 425. So how will we ever come up with a starter for every type following these constraints using only the limited Pokemon pool of Generation 1? Well,
that's where we get to use our imagination.
Get ready, because we're about to start doing a whole lot of fiddle-faddling. Let's get right into this. I'll discuss why I've picked what I've picked as we make our way through the types. Now, before we actually get going on this video, I just wanted to let you know, you're going to hear me say BST a whole lot in this video, and in case you don't know, BST stands for base stat total. And a Pokemon's base stat total is the total of their base stats. Okay, let's get going. So we have a lot of choices when it comes to normal types. Rattata, Clefairy, Jigglypuff, Meowth, Lickitung, Chansey, Kangaskhan, Tauros, Ditto, Eevee, Porygon, and Snorlax. So while the pool of normal types is very wide, unfortunately it's also very shallow, because none of these Pokemon belong to a 3-stage evolutionary line. So we're going to have to get kind of creative right off the bat here to figure out which Pokemon best fits the kind of starter archetype we're trying to fill. I don't want to reuse starters, so right away we can rule out Eevee because it is technically a Gen 1 starter that your rival in Yellow uses. It's also a starter in the Gen 7 game Let's Go Eevee. I also don't want to use Pokemon that gained evolutions in later games, so I'm going to eliminate Chansey as well. There are no perfect options here, but to stay as close to the starter mold as possible, I'm at least going to pick a line that has an evolution. So that means we're left with Rattata, Clefairy, Jigglypuff, and Meowth. For the purposes of this video, we're just going to assume that all the Pokemon evolve at the traditional starter evolution levels, so Pokemon that evolve via trade or stone are also options for us to pick. Taking all this into account, my decision is going to come down to really just design and kinda startery vibes. In my opinion, Rattata and Meowth are a little too, they're just an animal to me. Jigglypuff's design is also a little boring to me, being just kinda this round fluff ball thing. So I think the Pokemon with the most interesting design, with the most starter-y vibes of the normal types we have remaining, is Clefairy. What's up, guys? It's me from the future. I'm sure some of you are thinking, hey, you didn't eliminate Snorlax or Jigglypuff for having new evolutions, and you picked Clefairy even though it has Cleffa. Yes, I did. Those evolutions, for whatever reason, completely slipped my mind, and I'm only just now remembering. The normal type part of this video is a bit of a mess, but I stand by Clefairy, and I think the made-up evolution for it is awesome. Clefairy is perfect for Stage 1, but Clefable is too strong for Stage 2 and also too weak for Stage 3. So I'm going to make Clefable the Stage 2. To get to the Universal Stage 2 starter BST, we're going to drop Clefable's HP to 80, attack to 55, defense to 60, special to 70, and keep its speed at 60. And then the fun begins. We're going to create its final evolution, Clemythic. Clemythic will have 100 HP, 80 in attack, 85 for defense, 90 special, and 70 speed. It would be the slowest starter so far, so it's gonna go second frequently. However, its high HP and special along with a decent defense means it will take those hits well, and with a respectable 80 in attack, it can take full advantage of the wide pool of TMs normal types often have at their disposal. We have a lot fewer options for the fighting type. We have Mankey, Machop, Hitmonlee, and a Hitmonchan. And I mean, there's really one obvious choice here. The only 3-stage evolution, and a very iconic line. We're going to go with Machop. Now, Machop's BST would be the highest of all first form starters, but not egregiously so. So while I'm not going to decrease its stats, I am going to alter them. 80 attack is really high for a first form, so I'm going to knock it down to 60 and put 10 more into special and speed because I feel like a starter should be a bit more well-rounded than what Machop is. Machoke is also a bit OP for a second form starter, so I'm going to take 10 off attack and HP to drop it from 345 BST down to the standardized 325. Then I'm going to take 10 more off attack and 10 from defense and put them into special and speed to again round him out a bit. This is where it gets interesting because this line has been overpowered so far, but Machamp actually has a smaller BST than the original starters with a total of 420, as opposed to 425. I'm going to start off by throwing the extra 5 into speed, then I'm going to go and take 20 out of attack and put that into speed as well, making him marginally faster than Blastoise, and I'm going to take 5 out of HP and put that into special. Now, 5 points isn't going to make a huge difference for either of these stats, but at least to me, the numbers just look better. So for flying, we do have some interesting choices. We have Pidgey, Spearow, Doduo, Zubat, Aerodactyl, Scyther, and Farfetch'd. Now, I really don't want to use fossils or one-stage Pokemon, so right away we can get rid of Aerodactyl, Scyther, and Farfetch'd. I'm also going to eliminate Zubat because it gives a lot more of a poison vibe than a flying vibe to me, and that leaves us with Pidgey, Spearow, and Doduo. Now, I don't mind creating new evolutions when we have to, but we don't have to. There is one 3-stage evolution, one of, if not the most iconic Pokemon birds, Pidgey. We are going to have to buff Pidgey's stats just a little bit. We'll add 10 to its special to give it a little bit more bulk, then we're going to add 5 to the rest of its stats to keep it nice and well-rounded, with speed still being its primary stat. Pidgeotto and Pidgeot stats are also easy to figure out, since they're both 26 below their stage's BSTs. We can simply add 5 to HP, attack, defense, and special, and 6 to speed. Now, Pidgey does have that just a bird kind of vibe, but I think it's clearly the best option we have. Poison is another type with a lot of options. We have Ekans, the 2 Nidorans, Zubat again, Weedle, Oddish, Venonat, Tentacool, Grimer, Ghastly, and Coughing. Now, a lot of these Pokemon also fall into the just an animal kind of thing, or they're dual types who feel more like their other type than poison. When you eliminate those, we're left with the Nidorans, Grimer, and Coughing. Now, I did really consider all these Pokemon, but ultimately I decided on the one that, to me, just feels the most like a starter, and it also has 3 forms. I picked Nidoran Male. I'm going with the male Nidoran because it leans more towards damage dealing, while the female leans more towards bulk, and I think it's more useful for a starter to be focused on attack. Now, it might be a little weird for a starter to have a counterpart that isn't a starter, but none of these are going to be 100% perfect. All we have to do to Nidoran is add 5 to each of its stats to get it to that 250 range, albeit a tad over, but not enough to make a huge difference. Nidorino and Nidoking are 15 under the BST they should be at, which makes this easy as well. We'll add 3 to each stat, and we're done. Moving on to the ground type, our options are Sandshrew, Diglett, Geodude, Onix, Cubone, and Rhyhorn. Right away, we're going to rule out Geodude, Onix, and Rhyhorn. I'm doing this because those Pokemon are obviously way more rock type than they are ground type. In fact, being a ground type really just hurts them because it gives all 3 of them 4 times weaknesses to grass and water, 2 extremely common types in this generation. And while I love Diglett, I mean, I ran a Doug Trio on almost every team back when I was a kid playing Pokemon Yellow, but I have to rule it out because its design to me just isn't interesting enough to be a starter. That leaves us with two great options with Cubone and Sandshrew, but at the end of the day, I decided to go with Sandshrew. Now, its stats are going to take a little finagling to get where they should be. Its BST of 280 is too high, and its stats should also be distributed a little bit more evenly. We're going to knock 20 off its defense and attack, then tack back on 5 to its speed and 10 to its special to put it at 255 BST. It gets a massive stat spike when it evolves to Sandslash, taking it all the way up to 405, closer to a stage 3 than a stage 2, so we're going to make Sandslash the ground type's final evolution. And to get Sandslash the proper 425 stage 3 BST, we're going to give it 85 HP, 90 attack, 100 defense, 70 special, and 80 speed. And now for the stage 2 of this line. We're going to call this guy Sand Slice, and all we got to do for its stats is knock 20 off of the stage 3 Sandslash's stats to get it down to the required 325. So for rock types, we have Geodude, Onix, Rhyhorn, Ammonite, Kabuto, and Aerodactyl. But like I said earlier, I don't want to use fossils, so we're going to take away the last 3. Among the choices we have left, I think Geodude is the obvious pick. It's the only 3-stage rock type in the game, and while its initial design isn't super interesting, I think Graveler and Golem are both really cool. While Geodude's 270 BST is not incredibly far out of a first form's normal range, its stat balance is way off. Obviously, we're going to stay true to what a rock should be, and while it's okay for a starter to be weaker in certain areas, you can't have those weaknesses be as overwhelmingly obvious as Geodude's are in special and speed. We're going to take 20 from attack and 30 from defense, and then add 15 on to special and speed, and leave it at that for Geodude. We can do the exact same thing to Graveler since its BST is also 20 above the range we need to be at. Golem, however, is 5 below what the third form starter needs, but its attack and defense are still higher than what they should be for a starter, even if it's a rock type. We're going to drop 15 from each of these stats. I'm also going to take 5 away from HP, give it 25 speed and 15 special to bring it up to the 425. Moving on to bug type. There's Weedle, Caterpie, Paris, Venonat, Scyther, and Pinsir. I don't want to use either of the 1-stagers. The Wormy Boys have 3 stages, but they don't give a starter feel at all. Paris has 3 4x weaknesses, so I don't want to use him. That leaves us with Venonat, and while it isn't the perfect choice, I think it's the best available one that we have. Venonat's BST is, just perfect. Exactly 250 with a pretty well-rounded spread, so we're just going to leave its stats where they are. Venomoth's stats are right in between the stage 2 and stage 3 requirements, but I feel like just a moth doesn't really represent what a final form starter should be, so we're going to make Venomoth the middle evolution and whip ourselves up a stage 3er. Venomoth's evolution will be this beast named Venoswarm. Now we still have to address Venomoth's stats. We're going to drop its special and speed by 20 and its attack and defense by 5. We're going to leave its HP alone so it feels noticeably more bulky than Venonat. Venoswarm's stats will be 85 HP, 75 attack, 70 defense, 105 special, and 90 speed. It is a bit weaker physically than starters usually are, but a serviceable HP stat with a higher special will still give it decent bulk, and a solid speed stat of 90 gives it special sweeper potential. So for the ghost type, we have Ghastly. So our starter is going to be Ghastly. Now this may be my favorite evolutionary line in the entire series. 3 absolute banger designs, and I mean, my channel is literally named after Haunter, so you may have been able to deduce that that's my favorite Pokemon. Unfortunately, I have to kind of ruin these legends because a starter that's immune to normal moves with 100 special and 80 speed would frankly embarrass the game. We have to adjust Ghastly's stats. We're going to take 40 from special and 20 from speed, then put 20 in HP and 10 in attack and defense respectively for a BST of 255. Haunter has a BST of 350, so we have to lower his overall stats as well as redistribute them. We're going to take 30 from special and 20 from speed. I think we can get away with leaving his attack at 50 since it's never going to use that stat anyway, and I think it would benefit much more from another 15 into HP and 10 into defense. Now Gengar's BST is perfect at 425, but still needs some changing. We're going to take 15 from special and speed and put them right into HP and defense, leaving its attack at 65. For fire type, we have Vulpix, Growlithe, Ponyta, and Magmar. No Charmander, because like I said at the start of this video, I don't want to reuse starters. Now Magmar has a lot working against it, because like I also said earlier in the video, I don't want to use a Pokemon that gained an evolution in a later game. It's also just a one-stager in this game. After taking all this into consideration, I ultimately landed on Growlithe. Now Growlithe is pretty strong for a first form with a BST of 280. We'll have to reduce his stats to get him to the right spot. We're going to take 15 off attack, 5 off HP, and 5 off speed to put him at a more appropriate 255. I've said in previous videos that Arcanine is a mountain of stats, and he is a mountain of stats. This is the first instance of a Pokemon surpassing the 425 BST, and he does it in grand fashion, dwarfing the original starters with a BST of 455. Because of his immense stats, there's a lot of speculation online of whether or not Arcanine was actually intended to be a legendary Pokemon. In fact, it's even classified as legendary Pokemon. While most of what I can find online about this topic dismisses a lot of this speculation as just that, speculation and misunderstandings, there are articles and videos by well-established content creators claiming this to be true. And in an early anime episode, our heroes inspect a slab depicting legendary Pokemon, of which Arcanine is included. Personally, I don't have a strong opinion either way, but I think it's cool to talk about. Anyway, back to why we're here. It doesn't make sense to drop Arcanine's stats all the way to 325 to make it a Stage 2, and I think its design gives off the majestic, powerful look that I think really suits a Fire-type starter, so let's discuss a second form for this line. I'm gonna get its name from Fantasy and Hound and call it Phantound. Okay, cut me a little slack. I'm not a nomenclator. I bet you didn't know that word. That's right, I like to mix in a little education from time to time. Now you can say you watched an X amount of minutes long video about Pokemon theory and actually learned a real world thing. Amazing. Now for our even more made up than other Pokemon stats. We'll go for 60 HP, 75 attack, 55 defense, 65 special, and 70 speed. Now we still have to actually hammer out Arcanine's stats. So to finish this type, we'll go 80 HP, 100 attack, 75 defense, 80 special, and 90 speed. Now water has a ton of options. Those being Psyduck, Poliwag, Tentacool, Slowpoke, Seal, Shelder, Krabby, Horsey, Goldeen, Staryu, Magikarp, Lapras, Ammonite, and Kabuto. I'm not going to go over every single one of these Pokemon. I'm just going to tell you I picked Poliwag. It's 3 stages. Its design I think is cool enough to be starter worthy, and I've always liked the line personally. So that's what we're going with. Poliwag's BST is 260, pretty good for a first form, but with 90 base speed, it needs a bit of reallocating. We're going to take 20 from speed and put 10 into HP and 5 into special. Poliwhirl is extremely well-rounded, but it's still a bit fast for a second form and will need to knock 10 total off of its BST. We're going to take 10 away from speed, then move 5 from HP and defense and put it into special. Since water attacks draw from the special stat, this will give its stab water moves a bit more oomph it would otherwise be lacking. Poliwrath is an interesting evolution stat-wise. It actually becomes slower, but its bulk skyrockets. I really don't like the idea of a starter becoming weaker in a certain area as it evolves, especially in an important stat like speed. Fortunately, this is an easy fix. Since its BST is 410, we can keep all of its stats the same to stick with the tankiness of the original design and tack the extra 15 we need onto speed, so it becomes faster than Poliwhirl, even if only marginally so. For grass, we're back to a much more reasonable number of Pokemon to select from, those being Bellsprout, Oddish, Paris, Execute, and Tangela. Right away I'm going to rule out Paris, Execute, and Tangela for a number of reasons, but the biggest being they're not 3 forms. Both of these Pokemon were real contenders, but I feel like Oddish is more poison grass, while Bellsprout feels more grass poison, so that's what I ultimately went with. Bellsprout's stats are a little bit more specialized than the typical starters, so we're going to switch it around a bit, and we're also going to add to its BST of 240. We take 10 away from attack, add 15 to defense, then take another 10 from special and add 15 to speed. Weepin' Bell is actually a bit strong for a second stage with a BST of 345. So first thing we can do is take 10 off of its attack and special. From there, we'll slide 10 more from attack and special into defense and speed. Victory Bell is very close from a BST perspective, having 420. We're going to take 10 away from attack and special and move them to defense and speed. Then we'll throw an extra 5 into attack. I think its stat spread is now well-rounded enough to be a starter, while also keeping its mixed attacking nature. Electric has an interesting pool to select from, with Pikachu, Magnemite, Voltorb, and Electabuzz. We're obviously not doing Pikachu. It's already been a Gen 1 starter, it's received evolutions in future games, its evolutions have received alternate forms in future games, it's the series mascot, we don't need more Pikachu. I can also eliminate Electabuzz pretty easily because it's received 2 evolutions in future games. It was kinda tough to select between Magnemite and Voltorb, as Magnemite has received an additional evolution, but Voltorb has also received an additional form. Now, a lot of people make fun of its design, but I've always loved its design. It might be the most controversial selection in this video, but dang it, I'm going with Voltorb. Voltorb's BST is high at 275 with a massive 100 speed, but fixing its stats is easy. All we're going to do is take 20 from its speed, then move 10 more from speed to attack, and another 5 into HP. Now, Electrode's BST is closer to stage 3 than 2, but I think its design is giving more of a middle form vibe, and I'd rather put a little more work into adjusting stats and giving this line a final evolution to look forward to. We're going to take a massive 55 points off of its speed. Despite this huge decrease, its BST is still 20 over the stage 2 requirement, so we're going to take 10 off special and 10 off defense. This makes it a bit squishier than I'd like, but this line is defined by its speed, so we're going to make some compromises to stay true to the vision of this Pokemon. This is the final form called Plasmorb. It's based on plasma globes. You know those little electric ball things that you'd touch them and the electricity would follow your finger around? We'll give it the psychic type as well, because to me this thing just feels and looks very psychic-y. For its stats, we'll go 110 for its main stat, speed, 75 for HP, 70 attack, 80 for defense, and 90 in special. Again, this starter isn't going to take hits extremely well, but with special functioning as special attack and defense, it isn't totally helpless. Combined with the fact that speed serves the dual purpose of moving first and crit chance, hopefully this Pokemon won't have to worry about taking too many hits anyway. The Psychic type offers Abra, Slowpoke, Drowsy, Execute, Mr. Mime, and Jinx. The selection here was pretty easy. The Abra line is the only 3-stage line. It's an extremely iconic Pokemon. That's what we're going with. Abra has a BST of 265, with almost all of it being devoted between its insane 105 special and 90 speed. Clearly something has to be done about this. We're going to delete 10 from special entirely to drop it to a more appropriate 255 BST, but then we'll take 25 from special and speed and put 20 into HP, 25 into defense, and the final 5 into attack. Kadabra has a BST of 330. I'm going to start this off by knocking 5 off speed so we're working with an appropriate total of 325. Now we take 30 from special and 20 from speed and do what we did last time, 20 to HP, 25 to defense, and 5 to attack. Alakazam sits with a BST of 405, and we'll start by taking 15 from speed and special respectively. Once again, we end up with 50 points to work with, and once again, 20 to HP, 25 to defense, and 5 to attack. We only have 2 options for the Ice type, Jynx and Lapras. I think Lapras looks the most like a starter. We're going to go with Lapras. This is the one and only type that requires us to come up with 2 new forms. And because of Lapras's immense 450 BST, Lapras will be the final form, and we'll come up with the first 2 stages. The first form is a Pokemon I've named Agnessi, an anagram of the Scottish Gaelic word Nisig, a name for the Loch Ness Monster of which Lapras is based on. Agnessi will have a nice and clean BST of 250, 65 HP, 50 attack, 45 defense, 55 special, and 35 speed. The second form is Romterix. Its name is based on the second part of the Latin name for the Loch Ness Monster, Nessiteris rhomboterix, and its stats will be 85 HP, 65 attack, 60 defense, 70 special, and 45 speed. Last but not least is Lapras, whose stats we have to adjust to get down to the proper 425. We'll give it 110 HP, 80 attack, 75 defense, 90 special, and 70 speed. While this is definitely one of the slowest starters, it has tremendous bulk with a high HP and special stat, and its attack is decent enough to maybe give it a physical coverage move. Our choices for Dragon type are Dratini. Dratini is the perfect starter. It has well-rounded stats, leaning towards physical attack, a perfect BST of 250. Is this the first time we haven't had to change anything about an actual Pokemon stats? Cool. Let's talk about Dragonair. Dragonair's BST is 35, and because it's so well-rounded, I think it makes the most sense to just take 5 out of each stat to hit the 325 we're looking for. If Arcanine was a mountain of stats, Dragonite is a planet of them. An absolutely massive base stat total of 500. For the starter form of Dragonite, we're going to give it 105 attack, and to keep with this line's well-roundedness without having to take from its only serviceable 80 speed, we're just going to give it 80 in every other stat. Shout out to my incredible wife for doing all the drawings of the Pokemon I had to make up, and also naming a number of them. Pretty much if a name seemed good, it was her, and if it seemed bad, it was mine. Well, that's it. 15 types, 15 starters. What do you think? Disagree with any of my decisions? Well, let me know in the comments and I'll let you know why you're wrong. Thanks for checking this video out. I know it's different from the content I've made so far and I had a great time making it. I hope you enjoyed watching. Remember to drop a like and subscribe. I got more stuff like this in the works as well as more gameplay stuff. See you around.